Okay, we're going to get started now that we're at 12 o'clock here. My name is Chris Ward. I run customer experience over at Turbonomic. I'd like to first welcome everyone to our quarterly customer webinar. We, not only with our monthly newsletters, but we also run these webinars to keep our customers as up to date as possible. Personally, I'm quickly approaching my 9-year anniversary here at Turbo, and I'm so proud of where our platform is and how hard our engineering team works every single day to meet our customer needs and drive the industry forward towards managing performance and application resource management. We have a jam-packed and exciting agenda today. First, we'll be covering Turbonomic SaaS. Then we're going to Turbonomic Data Cloud. And then we have an exciting Park My Cloud update. And then we'll have Sevne Data Platform. And then we'll be finishing off with a Q&A. Now, if we don't get to answer every single one of your questions, or if any questions pop up after the webinar today, please just email me directly and I'll make sure you get situated, or we can help you learn more at chris.ward@turbonomic.com. And then finally, we'll end with a raffle for the Lego Star Wars Millennium Falcon. To get right into the agenda, I'm going to kick it over to Ben Yamini to cover Turbonomic SaaS.
Great. Thank you, Chris. All right. So yeah, just as a quick intro, my name is Ben. I'm a product manager at Turbonomic. I work very closely with our platform team, or development teams that build our underlying platform. What I'm going to talk about today is first starting with Turbonomic 7 and then jumping into SaaS as a key way you can consume or leverage Turbonomic 7. Over the last 3 years, our development teams have been busy modernizing our core product. And for those of you who have been customers since roughly our 6.0 release more than 3 years ago, you might be familiar with some of these modernizations. We started off by providing you with a new user interface, moving away from Flash. We've improved our analytics more under the covers, leveraging a new, what we call Market 2, or brand new analytics system. And the culmination of that efforts is what we refer to as Turbonomic 7, or Excel, having a full microservices architecture, which under the covers leverages Kubernetes to provide you guys with a few key benefits. So starting with leveraging Kubernetes for higher availability. So we rely on Kubernetes to make sure that the components are restarted and scheduled based on the resources and the limits that they need. It also allows us to develop at a much higher speed. We've got a separation of concerns, so we can provide capabilities more quickly and also do that with a higher level of quality. From a scale limit, we've now reached a point where there's really no practical scale limit for the deployment size of Turbonomic. At this point, Turbonomic 7 has been deployed with over 50 of some of our largest customers. And across any environment, I think we were approaching over 100,000 virtual machines with a single instance, and allowing, as well as the applications that are consuming those resources, and allowing customers to manage that through one pane of glass or one instance. And one thing to note, as we talk about Turbo 7, every new capabilities or new features that we'll be delivering are going to be on top of this platform. So I'd encourage all of you to learn more about Turbo 7 and start migrating to it, as that's where the new capabilities will be delivered. In terms of how you can use or deploy Turbonomic, just starting from right to left. So as I mentioned, we're leveraging Kubernetes under the covers. That means that it can be deployed into any existing Kubernetes cluster, whether that's OpenShift, AKS, or EKS in a cloud environment. We also offer this as a prepackaged OVA. So similar to how many customers have used our 6.0 or earlier releases, it can be deployed that same way. And then we want to go a little bit deeper on the next couple slides. It's SaaS. So Turbonomic 7 has now enabled us to offer a fully managed service for customers. So what does that mean? From a SaaS deployment, at least from our perspective, that means we are providing a dedicated instance per customer. The core services are running in top-tier data centers provided by Google and AWS, and we're using a multiple availability zone deployment. which translates to a fairly high SLA, which we can provide 99.5% or higher. And then, as can be expected, we manage all the updates, the patches, any security that needs to be provided to make sure that the service is up and running. The other thing to note is current support is for those workloads or applications running in AWS or Azure. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in the demo of what that means. And then I think another key question that typically comes up when it comes to using SaaS is security. So a couple notes here. We are leveraging core security and best practices for our cloud partners. They do a fairly good job securing their underlying infrastructure, and we leverage that. We're encrypting and securing any data in transit using TLS. We've got dedicated encryption keys to make sure that any data at rest is also secure. And we've also have operational best practices in terms of limiting and logging access to the operational environment or the back end to only a subset of individuals to make sure that the information and instances are all highly secure. Okay. So with that, let's transition here to a demo. I just want to kind of give you a quick peek of what Turbonomic SaaS looks like. So for all of you, if you're familiar with the Turbonomic user interface, you'll notice that it's actually fairly similar. We have made a bunch of user experience improvements. Before we go into those, just to understand what is currently supported, you can add any target that is running in a public cloud environment. So that means your AWS and Azure. It also means any application management tools such as Dynatrace or AppD. We also have recently added New Relic and App Insight, which is available on Turbonomic 7. We also have support for any cloud native, in this case, Kubernetes. So if those Kubernetes environments are running in Azure or AWS, you can add them as targets here and leverage Turbonomic's decisions for that environment. And then just to highlight a couple of the improvements from a usability and experience in SaaS, and this is consistent also with Turbonomic 7 in general. As you can see, the regions and availability zones as well as volumes are now more consistent with those of you familiar with managing public cloud environments. We've added the ability to fully execute or automate any storage deletions. So one of the key capabilities, so both providing additional information in terms of unattachment, last attachment VM, how long it's been unattached, and the ability to fully automate those actions. It's a kind of a key use case for those looking to clean up some of the mess that might have been left behind in a cloud environment that is costing too much money. And then you can see from a couple other things, all the types of actions and scaling decisions that you've been familiar with are still here. And we're continuing to improve and iterate in terms of providing with simpler ways or easy ways to understand the recommendation Turbonomic provides for your environment. So that's it for me, and I'll hand it back to you, Chris.
Okay, and next up, we'll be passing it over to GP DeSantis for the Turbonomic Data Cloud. And I do want to remind everyone that after everyone has presented, we will be taking live Q&A. Here we go, GP. GP, I think you're on mute still.
There we go. So
there we go.
Yeah, thank you. So great. I'd like to talk to you today about Turbonomic Data Cloud, a new product that we're delivering later this year, and really excited to show it to many of you for the first time. So Data Cloud is an application performance data warehouse. It's built to help you collaborate across application infrastructure teams and give you time machine for your supply chain and really drive the conversation around how application infrastructure works together. You can spot trends before they become problems, getting ahead of the curve and making sure you can spot those problems easily, and allow you to plan better. And let me just walk through a little bit of what that means, as we've talked to a lot of customers about their challenges in managing application performance. So we get this kind of typical thing as we talk to a lot of infrastructure folks, you know, they and application folks, they say similar things. You know, the application team gets kind of an alert in their application monitoring platform like AppD or Dynatrace, New Relic, and they don't know why their application is slow. They're not sure if there was a server outage. Is their VM too big? Do they need more storage? And they don't have the insight to the whole stack to understand what potentially could be causing that. And then the infrastructure team with Turbo in hand might say, you know, they might get asked, you know, did something happen on your end? And they'll say, well, let me see, did Turbo generate any actions? Maybe it's a code issue. You know, they don't have visibility to the application team. The application team doesn't have visibility into the infrastructure. And then the infrastructure team is also wondering if it is something infrastructure related, are any other apps being affected? These are really tough problems, and they're hard to kind of get to the bottom of. So there's no real common language for anyone to communicate across these teams. There's no single source of the truth. The data is siloed. One team has one set of monitoring, the other team has another set of monitoring. It might have Turbo. And at the very least, the infrastructure teams are severely outnumbered. There's tons of application teams that are asking for their attention and asking for this information and understanding what might be causing an issue. So they're swamped. It's really problematic. And so a lot of people turn to a data warehouse of some kind, a performance data warehouse. And so they'll take their application performance data, they'll take their infrastructure management data and feed it into this performance data warehouse. And then they'll want to get the visibility. You know, they'll want to see, you know, all the data from all the sources. They want to get that correlation. So it's not just enough to have the data, but you have to understand how the things relate to each other. How does the infrastructure and the application tie together so that you can find the commonalities between the two? That's one of the key things about bringing all that data together, or else you have silos again. They want to feed the Turbonomic actions into that system. We've talked to a lot of customers that say, can you please feed this data into my performance data warehouse? I need to align it with all this other data that I have. They want powerful dashboarding that's really, really flexible, that lets them see what they want to see when they want to see it. And then they want to consolidate those tools so they don't have to spread out all over their estate to figure out what's happening. And so what we see is people trying to build this, and there's a lot of challenges that come with that. You have to script every integration. So every integration with every point tool that's feeding data has to be scripted. You have to feed that in manually. You have to do that yourself. You have to develop a schema and some kind of structure to the data that has to be decided by a bunch of stakeholders that have very different opinions, and that's very difficult. They have to procure hardware or cloud databases to feed that data in and to load it up. That can be expensive and really hard to manage. And at the very least, you know, the tags going out of sync. And I'll remind everyone who hasn't lived in the world of CMDBs from 10 years ago. CMDBs, you know, synchronizing with the CMDB was like the big thing in ITSM 10 years ago. And the hardest thing with the CMDB was keeping everything in sync. And that problem doesn't go away, right? When you have a system that's strung together with a bunch of systems wired together, pulling data in from all different places. It's really, really hard and to keep those in sync. So with Data Cloud, you don't need to build all those integrations. We pull data in from Turbonomic, from Sevne Data Platform, and from Prometheus direct integration with Prometheus. You get really fast queries with an intuitive schema that allows you to just query the tags you want, query the data you want, really, really simply at your fingertips. It's inexpensive. You can store 13 plus months of your sample data, not roll-up data. It's 13 months of your sample data, much cheaper than you could store it anywhere else. It's phenomenal for the amount of for the cost that you would pay. It's a fraction. And we automatically understand the supply chain and the tagging. We automatically understand how all the things connect because we're pulling the data from Turbonomic. We understand how these things connect. So you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to keep these things in sync. We discover it from the environment and stitch it together and know exactly what's connected to what. So we're asking people to join our design partner program. We need people to give us feedback, our customers. If you join the program, you get early access to Data Cloud. You get to influence the roadmap, which I know a lot of people love. And ultimately, you get better insight than ever on your application performance. This is deep, deep insight that you can't get from anywhere else. There's limited spots available for this program. So if you're interested, please contact your rep or your customer experience representative, your account representative, whoever you work with on the Turbonomic side to understand more and get a meeting with me to discuss it. You will be talking with me. So I want to show you a quick demo. So let me flip over to that. Thank you. So this is Data Cloud. It's a SaaS service we run in the cloud. This is my homepage where it tells me, that the data is being collected right now from my environment. Let me click into our main dashboard here. And so I'll just quickly kind of walk through a little bit of what you see here. We're pulling in data from all the different areas of your applications and your infrastructure. The data up top is coming from AppD and aligning your conversations around the application. That's really the goal of all of this, application performance. This is the performance of your applications across the board, easily listed from slowest to fastest. And we have our applications all here based on response time. I can highlight the ones I want. I can select different time frames if I want to and really get deep into what I want to see. But where the real power comes in is in the next area. If you look at the next area, again, we have those applications listed, but we have two new columns in that screen that are really, really powerful and already start to show you what you can do when you have all this data at your fingertips. So we have the applications listed, slowest to fastest again, but we have a marker of whether SLOs are being violated. In this case, there's two of them with that. And whether there's resource risks, whether there's anything in the infrastructure that might be a cause of those performance issues. So you can immediately know, is there something that Turbo is telling us, that Turbonomic is telling us, before even drilling in any further. You don't have to scan a bunch of charts. You don't have to look through a bunch of data to sift through the needle in to sift through the haystack to find the needle. It's all there, right there. And so you can see here, there's a couple here with yeses. So we have a couple applications that do have performance risks. Let's dig into that and try to understand what that means. So here we have this LexCorp webmail app that has varying levels of transactions, varying levels of response time. And you can see that there's kind of a counter dip in the response time and the transactions, which is interesting. But one thing you'll notice is the resources of every system below it is very loaded. So we have here ESX servers that are at 96% of memory utilization. We have VMs here that are 92% of CPU utilization. They're really highly stacked up. There's a lot of contention here. There's a lot of resource, and this is the average utilization. These things are probably peaking way above these levels. And so you can see that this application, even though it has very, very few transactions, is highly constrained. And this would be a big problem for any application that suddenly gets a load spike. So if there was a spike in the load, this thing would probably not fare so well given how heavily utilized it is. And on top of that, Turbonomic is screaming to make changes here. So screaming about the heap of the applications servers, screaming about the storage access and the host memory. It's telling you that you need to do these actions to prevent any kind of issue. This is looking ahead. This is looking forward and saying, if you don't want something bad to happen, take these actions. And Turbonomic generates them, and it's all right here. The data from the infrastructure, the data from the application monitoring systems, and the data from Turbonomic. It's all here and easily visualized and queryable right in one spot. Thanks so much. I appreciate the time. I look forward to speaking to many of you soon.
Yeah, hey guys. Thanks, GP. Chris, can you guys hear me? All right, just making sure before we get started. Didn't want to talk into nothing. So anyway, thanks for taking the time, everybody. I appreciate it. My name is Jay Chappell. I'm VP of Park McCloud. If you guys are not familiar with Park McCloud, we were acquired by Turbo about a year ago. And we are a SaaS platform that sits and hosts in, sits and runs in AWS. So just to get in a little bit more detail here, I want to follow up on what was discussed earlier related to Turbo SaaS. So Ben did a good job of that, and we're going to talk about the integration between PMC and Turbo SaaS and why it's important to our customers. Trying to page down. There it goes. All right, so just to give everybody a little background on where we are in cloud, most people are familiar with cloud computing, cloud, et cetera. So one of the big initiatives for 2020 is around optimizing the existing use of cloud services. So people can put that kind of in two categories, but the main category is associated with cost savings. So one's performance-based and one's cost-based. Spend a little bit of time today talking about the cost-based aspect of this and the need for people to ensure savings. Obviously, that's very important in certain industries right now, given the global recession. So some people are more focused on this than others, obviously, given the industry and where things are going. But one of the things that we want to talk about is how you do this and what we focus on by doing this. So what we like to talk to here at with Turbonomic and Park McCloud is kind of the maturity path to optimization. So we look at the maturity of different companies and their use of public cloud. And by that, I'm primarily talking about the use of AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud. Either all three of them, one of them, or two of them. Doesn't really matter to us. But we're looking kind of across the maturity curve of what you need to start with. A lot of people like to start with visibility. So gathering all the data into a single bucket, being able to do chargeback, bill back, things like that. Next, we talk about areas that we can really, visibility doesn't really help you save money, provides visibility and better helps you manage that internally based on these big bills that you get from the cloud providers. But one of the things we sort of want to look at, how do you help actually save money in the cloud? So one of the easiest things to do is to schedule suspend, meaning that if you have development resources, non-production resources, we like to call them, dev, test, QA, things like that, you can turn them off at nights and weekends if they're not being used. By doing that, you can save 65%. You can identify unused resources and you can delete those. So if you're not using something, unattached volume, orphaned resource, whatever people want to call that, you can delete that. That comes off the bill. One of the other areas that people like to focus on is sizing. And there's really two things to sizing. I like to say there's right sizing, meaning you're spinning something, you're taking something from a large to a medium or medium to small. Each sizing action basically saves you about 50%, to be fair. So it can be significant in terms of savings, but that's not a scaling action. So one of the things that I think that people miss out on is a sizing action is probably better served for non-production environments where you're maybe not so worried about the performance of the application. But in a production environment, you need to take a scaling action, as we discussed earlier in the Turbo SaaS demo. So you need to look at how the application is performing and whether you need to actually scale that down or scale that up. Scaling up clearly isn't a cost savings mechanism, but is an optimization method. Scaling down can be both optimization and a cost savings method. So we're looking at that too. And then across, that's an IaaS and PaaS services. So as our technologies become more robust and more mature over time, then we can actually do this in PaaS layers as well, not just servers and databases and scale groups. So this is kind of where we plan to take the holistic solution over the next 18 months, and want to spend a little bit of time showing everybody how we're going to work on that and integrate that together. Okay, so basically what we're looking at here is an integration between Park McCloud, which, as I mentioned, is a SaaS platform. And now that we have Turbo SaaS out and with the demo there earlier, It looks fantastic, by the way, across the UI. So I think the team's done a phenomenal job with that. Is that look at the phases for setting up how PMC and Turbo integrate together over the next 18 months. So we need to set the stage for product integration. We'll talk a little bit about that. We need to share core recommendations between the consoles. We'll talk about that. And then 3, we need to cross-pollinate data between the different services. Why this is as important is because once we get the technologies integrated together, people can decide where they want to start their cloud journey, right? If you go back a couple slides, we have this path to optimization. You can start at the top, you can start at the bottom, you can start at the middle. But anyway, because different organizations decide to start in different areas, okay? So either way, we'll allow customers to decide where they want to start their journey. We won't dictate to them where they're going to start their journey. Okay. So the first thing we're going to start with is integrated single sign-on. Won't spend much time on this, but basically we'll have a single interface that we can connect through. Why this is important is 3 areas. Number 1, once you do this, then you can start sharing targets. So we all need to collect data from the same sources, and we don't want to pull that data with multiple tools on the same source. So we want to be able to collect that data from the same source and then leverage that data across the different engines and take actions on those. Number 2 is user governance. One of the big trends that we see in cloud today, and like cloud was 5 to 10 years ago, users would go out and be able to determine the cloud services they needed. Credit card, whatever, they can spin things up, spin them down. So as actions have become more mature and as the cloud becomes more mature, we see the need for more and more users inside the enterprise to be able to take actions, sizing actions, deleting actions, scheduling actions, whatever it is. So we want to be able to put the actions in the hands of the end users. Clearly, the cloud team needs to administer a technology like this, but you need to have the lines of business or the app owners be able to take those changes. They understand their applications and services better than obviously the cloud infrastructure team. And besides, in a large organization, that can be hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of actions per day, per week. That's a lot to put on a single team. For some reason, I keep skipping ahead, so I really apologize for that. So one of the 2 main things we want to do is be able to cross-link Turbo to PMC. So basically, if we look at what we do primarily in PMC is we focus on schedule suspend. So meaning we look at resource utilization and then make recommendations on those resources that aren't being used all the time. So if you think of a resource, as I mentioned earlier, that typically runs during the work week, that means it's off 65% of the time. But as everybody here knows, in the cloud, you're paying per second, per minute, per hour, whatever the rate level the cloud provider is providing to you. And so then if you can actually, quote unquote, turn that thing off, then you can save money while that is idle and not being used. And so what we want to do is be able to cross-link Turbo to PMC for schedule suspend. So we'll identify that into Turbo. We'll bubble up an alert, and then you can click on that alert in Turbo, as you can see here on the left. I apologize, it seemed to have skipped the screen. And then you can actually come into PMC and do this through Park My Cloud, okay? So this is really important because this is data-driven action. And you can automate this action, by the way. So it's not like you have to accept this through the UI. You can automate this through a policy engine. So the whole thing will be data-driven and policy-driven and automated for the user. Okay, so that went backwards. All right. So sorry about that, folks. Really having struggled with my keyboard on that. So once you're able to do that, and then you're basically at the time you're launching out of Turbo into PMC, you'll be able to go back into Turbo. So this is actually what a PMC UI looks like. This is a list of resources. So you can see a list of available functions and actions on the left. But once you click down into that alert that we send up into the Turbo platform, for lack of a better word, then you'll be able to click on that alert. You'll see that schedule that we recommend, and then you'll be able to come into the console and take an action there. But then you'll be able to go back through Turbo, back into Turbo if you want to, right through here. So you're not going to have to leave any. The user experience will allow you to toggle, for lack of a better word, between the 2 consoles. That's the first step. Okay. As we get farther along, as we mentioned in here, when we work on sort of this notional integration, then we're looking at PMC embedded in Turbo. So we're actually going to bubble up information, and then you'll be able to count the suspend actions you take in Turbo platform, and you'll also be able to count the dollars that you save in here. So the important thing is to measure the ROI that you're getting out of these platforms. In Park My Cloud, we save on customers, their average ROI is 815%, okay? So that's an average across our entire customer base. So by adding this schedule suspend capability and right sizing IaaS into the platform, you can actually improve the ROI that you're getting out of the entire use case between Turbo and PMC. So you bubble this information up, you show people the potential savings, you show people the actual savings, and you improve the ROI that you're getting out of the platform. So you're helping to optimize, and B, you're helping to cost save, okay? Driving efficiency into the cloud is what we're really focused on here. Yep. So I mentioned a little bit earlier about this use of data. So we call these smart parking recommendations. So basically this use of data means that we're collecting things like CPU usage or disk or network and even memory in some cases if it's turned on. Once we collect that information, then we're able to look at that information between a period of time of 2 weeks and 24 weeks, up to you. But once you bring that data in, then you're able to make these smart parking recommendations across that. So you're actually showing the usage patterns. In general, most of these usage patterns show demand during the day for a resource, and then demand on a weekly basis for patching and things like that. So we actually identify that in the system. So we create schedules that mirror how your resources are used in your environment. That information will be available in the Turbo UI. And then as we showed you earlier, you'll be able to take an action against that in the PMC UI. Moving forward, you can see PMC will be migrating to have the same look and feel as the Turbo UI, okay? So the next step in this will be having PMC's UI look very similar to Turbo. And you can see in here, we're also doing another thing. Say, for example, you're a PMC customer and you're not yet a Turbo customer, but we're sharing the same targets. We'll be able to leverage the Turbo policy engine to be able to make recommendations on scaling actions to take. So you'd be able to click on a scaling action in here, on an alert in here, get into the Turbo UI, and then see what that scaling action is that's recommended, or something similar to that. So you can see we actually have a list of resources in here, but you have a recommendation based on the type of action that should be taken, a quote unquote Turbo action or a quote unquote PMC action, okay? And then you can see we've made the UI very different looking in terms of the color scheme and the way it's laid out to mirror Turbo as we integrate the products into a single platform. Okay, so getting towards the end, and I do apologize, I think we skipped through 2 slides in there on accident, but such is life, remote life here. So 3 things I think that are important to take away from this. One is you looked at the cost optimization summary that we brought together for everybody, and then having that information, looking across all things that you can do across that in terms of suspending, scaling, reserving, and resizing actions to take, okay? Those are all very important things. We do see some companies that do all of these. We see some companies that do 1 of them, 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them. So it just kind of depends on, I guess, how progressive they are in terms of the way they deal with their cloud optimization and cloud cost control. Okay? The second thing in here that's very important, especially with large enterprises, is the need for multi-cloud optimization, okay? Every large enterprise that we work with, I should say 90% of the large enterprises that we work with are multi-cloud. Either a combination of AWS and Azure, AWS and Google, AWS, Azure, and Google. To be fair, we don't see too many Googles and Azures, okay? But they are in general multi-cloud. And the more and more we talk to, we're actually looking at 3 clouds because they'll be using Google for a lot of their AI and big data, okay? Hear that a lot out of customers too. The third thing is, that's where the trend is going, as I mentioned earlier, that's very important, but we didn't get into in a lot of detail, is satisfy customer demand for self-service user actions, okay? So you need to get the actions in the hand of the end user. If you're the infrastructure team, you're responsible for the cloud infrastructure, making sure that that's dynamic and working, making sure that people are provisioning and governing it in the right way. But you have to get the actions of cost savings and optimization into the hands of the end users because they know their application is the best. Wanted to thank everybody for their time. I do apologize for the challenges with the screen clip, and I think I'm going to turn it over to Jim, correct?
Yeah, that sounds right. Thanks, Jay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Melvin. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Sevne, and I'm here to talk about the network side of the business. And so I know that I'm not talking to the network guys today. Touch your control. There we go. I know I'm not talking to the network guys today, but the stories all start in the same place. You're all living through this time of digital transformation, and that applications now, far more than ever before, are driving the business. And I know I'm talking to the group that controls and manages the application infrastructure stack, but of course the network does matter. But before we get to that, it is important to note what's happening in our lives, right? And Satya Nadella was quoted a couple of weeks ago as saying that COVID-19 has accelerated digital transformation from the rapid pace that it was already on. We've gone through 2 years of transformation in the last 2 months, and we all feel that, right? It's not only the way we work, but the way we live, the way we socialize. Everything is being done online now. And of course, when we get out of COVID and get back to the new normal, we're all going to be moved a little bit further forward in digital transformation. So we know that all starts at the application layer, and we know that Turbo provides this application supply chain. Well, then where does Sev1 fit in? Sev1 is really all about the network infrastructure. Because if I want the application to deliver performance and I have the application supply chain understood, what lives underneath that is, of course, the network. And that network lives not only in the data center, but on the distribution path to the consumers of these mission critical applications. So how do we assure application performance? How are we successful at digital transformation? Well, it requires continuous network performance and visibility. And how does Sev1 provide that to our customers? It's really all about collecting all the data foundationally and then delivering insight via baselining, analytics, and alerting on top of that. And when I talk about all the data, it starts with really all of the network metrics. Any device that is part of the application creation or delivery path is a place where a problem can happen, and so you need network metrics to cover all of those. You move up one layer, you need the rich information from application flow information. That's the networks team #1 tool to understand how networks are being run across their environment. They need access to next generation controllers. The world of SD-WAN, SDN, and next generation virtualization solutions and collection is dramatically different than the past of polling for SD. You need all of these data assets. You need them highly available. If you have high availability requirements of the apps, the infrastructure and the monitoring has to flow with that. And then with that, you have to be able to deliver insight via baselining of metrics, via analytics, and via alerting. And you have to be able to provide executive dashboards and insight for workflow. And you have to have IT operational integration, things like ITSM integration, things like integration with data lakes. So all of these pieces really need to come together. And that's really what Sev1 does. We use all this information to deliver value. And I'm going to just show one solution area. Many of our customers, including some of our MSP clients with their top tier enterprise accounts, are making the shift to SD-WAN. And they don't just want an SD-WAN point of view, they want the entire network infrastructure that includes SD-WAN. And by the way, there are dozens of players in the market, all with different interfaces. How do I get my arms around that? Well, Sev1 has established itself as a market leader in this space by collecting information from these controllers and then bringing it into that single data platform to provide insight about the flow of applications over SD-WAN, the health of the devices, and the overall health of application delivery. So these are the elements that we deliver into the market today. And again, to introduce Sev1 to you, this is what we do. We are known in the market for our continuous network performance capabilities. We tend to cater to the high end of the market, very large enterprises, including financial services institutions, banks, insurance companies, retailers, tech companies. We also cater to global carriers, and we also have several managed service provider customers, people like Verizon Enterprise, British Telecom, CSC, and many others. And these are our delivery partners to our large customers. And I wanted to take this opportunity today to introduce the company to you. If there are network monitoring or network assurance initiatives happening in your company, we are working with our friends on the Turbo side to bring these technologies together on top of the leadership capabilities that we have today. And I'll just ask for more information. If you go to the Turbo Live website, there's a great demo that we just recorded a couple of weeks ago. It's called Unleashing Network Performance. Take a look at that. And for more information, reach out through your account rep, your CSM, or send us an email at info@sevne.com. Thank you very much.
All right. I'm going to jump in. Thank you, everybody, for those folks that unfortunately are used to this voice. My name is Eric Wright. I'm part of the presenting team to cover the Q&A here. So huge thanks to everybody for presenting. We've got some questions that came up in the panel. You can still drop them in if you want. If we don't have any time to cover your question live, we will definitely pick this up. Also, just to carry on Jim's, set of companies, and we look at our turbo companies that we're providing service to in Park My Cloud. Really, if you think about it, the companies that you use us. It's pretty amazing to see the logos that are on those screens that are incredible technology providers and service providers. And Jay shared a lot of the his content, and we've seen previous presentations. So as Jim mentioned, go to the Turbo Live site. There's a ton of great on-demand content. And also got to give one shout out to the education team here at Turbonomic. And this spans across all of our different platforms. So today, if you go to turbonomic.com/education, you can actually get up, and as part of the the difficulty that we're all facing right now around just we're forced to work remotely. We're experiencing a real worldwide difficulty with what COVID-19 brought upon us. And so our education team, headed up by Orna Klieger and a fantastic group of folks, are offering today free remote education, because we want to make sure that availability and cost are not a barrier to you getting access to the education to help us help you. And it's also a great opportunity for us to listen to you. So I know that, because that was one of the questions that came up, is any news on training. So for folks that are keen, you can go to turbonomic.com/education. Like I said, we've got all of our courses listed there. So I do encourage people to do that. A question, since I have Jay in mind, both because he's got a fantastic handlebar mustache that differed from his profile photo. But Jay, a question comes up: if I'm a Turbonomic customer today, how do I best make sure that I start using Park My Cloud? And maybe if you want to talk about, do we go through the account team? What's the best way to get signed up and get using that, if you don't mind covering that live here?
Yeah, the best way is definitely to go through the account team. So if you contact your account team, either your sales rep or customer success rep, then they will get us in touch with you. Then we generally have a conversation with you to make sure that what we provide fits your requirements, doing a demo in that. And then we usually do a trial. Pretty simple process with people. Usually takes and less than 30 days to figure out if we can provide value to you, your organization, and your cloud management needs.
Excellent. And then another question, since we're on Park My Cloud, I'll steal your time again, Jay. You mentioned sort of services. What are the different services that Park My Cloud's able to suspend? You showed obviously compute stuff in the demo, but there's kind of a lot more if you want to talk about the sort of varied stuff that you can bring power to.
Yeah, that's a good question. So virtual machines, for sure. Virtual machines inside scale groups or scale sets, whatever the cloud provider likes to call those. Databases and different types of databases. So for example, in AWS, I'll give that example. We work with RDS, we work with Redshift, we work with Aurora, and there's one other I just can't remember off the top of my head. And then we also work for the work with the cloud native container services like EKS, AKS, and GKE. And we generally suspend those nodes, their clusters, and they act very similar to scale groups. So generally, virtual machines, databases, scale groups, and container nodes, and we're always adding new services.
Excellent, Jay. Yeah, and it's again, for folks, reach through your account team, because we often get the question of, where's sort of the crossover of capabilities even today. While Jay showed some of the stuff in kind of future screens of how the technical integration is going to work, we already partner today in a ton of different environments who were existing Park My Cloud, and they've adopted Turbo. Their existing Turbo have adopted Park My Cloud. So there's beautiful, mergers of capabilities. One question as well, someone had popped in a note about Data Cloud. So they asked about what was the platform that we talked about having limited seats available. Everybody loves getting in on limited edition opportunities. So yeah, that is Turbonomic Data Cloud, which is our new platform that we're in technology preview sort of today. We're developing tightly with our customers, and we've got some really fantastic feedback. So yeah, if you want to reach out, drop into the Q&A, or again, you can just, there'll be a follow-on email. You can reach out through your account rep, and we'll make sure that we get you tied up into our product management team with GP. GP is a fantastic, fantastic human as well as a technologist. So he's going to be able to kind of carry you through what we can provide as incredible extra value. And the neat thing too is it's not just today in Turbonomic, but also we're seeing the opportunity for folks that are using Sev1 data platform. And if you're just looking to use Prometheus, not only are we adding, real capabilities inside what you're doing today, but we want to help you kind of up your game on different ways that you can manage and operate your environments to achieve the best performance. So I'm going to be doing a lot of blogging, as well as Jacob Ben David, who's a fantastic human who's on my team. Jacob, if you're not reading his blogs, go to blog, and he's got a ton of great stuff on cloud and cloud optimization. So yeah, GPS, if you want to maybe just audibly cover the question that had come up and you answered it here. So the application can pull metrics both on-prem and the cloud. GP, you want to just talk about what data we're pulling in today into Data Cloud and why that's important?
Yeah, sure. So we're pulling in all the data from the application and the infrastructure, whether that's coming from Kubernetes, coming from the hypervisors, coming from AppD, Dynatrace, New Relic, all the things that we have connectivity to, we're leveraging today. So it's really as expansive as Turbonomic is, Data Cloud is, plus it has integration already built for Sev1 data platform. It already has integration built with Prometheus, direct integration. So you can point your Prometheus exporters directly to Data Cloud and have it get the data directly. So it's a fantastic system. And on the other end too, you can actually use Data Cloud as a Prometheus front end. So you can query it like you would query Prometheus. So it's super powerful, and you have all those capabilities available in the current system. So yeah, it doesn't matter what the application comes from, we'll cover it.
Nice. And we've got other content that's going to come up that'll talk about Excel, that'll talk about Data Cloud. So make sure you keep your eyes on the homepage. If you go to any of our webinars, in fact, a lot of times we can sort of pre-sign you up for future webinars as they come down the pike, so to speak. So we've got a ton of great content that's always available. And everything is available on demand as well. So it's a good opportunity for everybody to stay in tune. And we're talking about not just Turbonomic and Park My Cloud and Sev1 content, but really industry content. We do a ton of stuff just to make sure that we can do something in some small way every day to help you. And it's always a bonus if we can do it through our platforms. But we've got such a great team of folks that are pre and post sales and trying to do what we can to listen and help your environment. Now, one thing actually, before we lose everybody, because I know we want to be respectful of people's time as we head up to the end of the hour, I'm going to pop up a quick poll for a second here. And this is a chance for you, if you want to actually see a personalized demo, because we talk a lot about, and we've seen some of the stuff in play today. So you can actually just say yes, and we'll give you a very specific, tailored demo to meet your requirements. This is really important for us because, rather than just you seeing on-demand content and not being able to interact with it, this is a chance for us to kind of up the interactivity and make sure that you can get the most out of what you're seeing. We've been very lucky in that we've seen the integration as teams and as platforms in such an incredible rapid pace. So this is a really unheard of in the market, that you can see the power of how Jim and the entire Sev1 team have brought platforms over to us. So Turbonomic Data Cloud's a great way to kick that off. And then Jay and the Park My Cloud team. So you also want to make sure you stay in tune. We're hosting a ton of meetups as well, so make sure you keep track of our websites. We're hosting a lot of virtual meetups Excellent. Okay, we'll keep that poll up actually for a few more minutes while we cover the last couple of questions. One question about Turbonomic XL that had come in. Is XL available, and how do we get that today? Ben, you covered that a bit in your talk track, so let's kind of just revisit that. For folks that are using Turbonomic 6 today, let's talk about the XL, the Turbonomic 7 transition, maybe, if you don't mind. I'm totally putting Ben on the spot. I didn't check to see if he's on camera.
Thanks, Eric. So a couple things to mention. So first, Turbonomic XL is generally available, or Turbonomic 7 is generally available. There's a link both on our website and in the Green Circle community, if you're familiar with that provides you with a form you can fill if you want to kind of not talk to anybody and just get the bits, or if you want to contact directly any of your Turbonomic reps, we can help you get the right bits. And it really depends, on how you want to deploy. So there's, as I mentioned before, you can use an OVA as the way you deploy it, or access it deploy it as an operator in your Kubernetes cluster, and pull it directly from our Docker repository. So that's kind of the options there. In terms of, I think the question there is also around migrating, right? So moving from Turbonomic 6 to Turbonomic 7, it is a migration. We've re-architected a lot of the core components, so it's not as simple as a kind of push button upgrade. It requires a net new deployment. We do have a few scripts that can help ease that migration, that essentially move things like targets, policies, groups, from one instance from your Turbonomic 6 instance to a Turbonomic 7 instance. And there's more information on that, again, in that Green Circle article. So that's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben. Also, question that came through, I'm using Turbo today, but is SaaS optional, or sorry, I guess maybe the question is SaaS an option? Perhaps was what the question actually was meant to say. If you're using Turbo today, can you move to using the SaaS version? I guess maybe that's for folks that are, and if you actually want to add some clarifying remarks, hopefully I'm covering the question right there. If you're today using Turbo on-prem, Ben, what's the best bet if you wanted to think about SaaS as the ongoing way to use Turbo?
Yes, I'll answer that in two ways. So one, if you're deployed Turbo today in your data center environment or your cloud environment, and you want to move to SaaS, and you're only targeting cloud, for public cloud, that's available today. And again, either go to the website, fill out a form, or contact a rep about that migration, going from your deployment to a SaaS deployment for targeting public cloud environments. If you're looking to use Turbonomic SaaS to target on-prem, that is something we have in our roadmap or backlog. We're still kind of gauging interest and across our install base. It is something that has come up. We don't have a specific date for when we'll offer it, but it's something we're paying close attention to how our customers want to use our SaaS offering.
Excellent, Ben. Yeah, and I think that's a question, one that a lot of folks
Eric, I think we lost your audio. I do think most of the questions were answered, though. So why don't we wrap up and pivot over to the raffle? I'm sure everyone's excited about. We already did a random choosing, and the winner of the Star Wars Millennium Falcon is Takeo D. Takeo, I will reach out to you. I have your email address, and I'll have a marketing team reach out and make sure that we send over this Millennium Falcon. I bought one for my son. He's 14 months, so yes, I bought one for myself, and it's super fun. But with that, if anyone has any questions, please reach out. Super appreciative of everyone on the Turbo side for putting this on, and obviously for the customers joining as well. Thank you so much, everyone.